welcome everybody. Good afternoon. I hope you got what you needed today from the fighters, and looking forward to Saturday's event as much as I am.
David, obviously this week the UFC have announced they're back in Dublin in August. Cage Warriors are back in the Republic this year as well. How do you feel about that? You know, how do Bellator feel as a promotion? Obviously you've been the solo guys for quite some time. More competition. Do you embrace that?
Yeah, well, I mean, we just like to come back, I think, more than once every 5 years. So for us, it's been a great place for us to come to, and we love it here. You know, we get a great reception. I think we have a really deep card with great Irish fighters, and I think, you know, we'll continue to do that despite what anyone else is doing.
What was the decision process in picking Leah? Obviously, Leah brings in so much mainstream media. She has a story that not a lot of fighters have. But what was the thought process from Bellator's point of view in picking her? Because we do have a lot of very experienced, very well-known fighters on the card.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think, I mean, you know, it wasn't a hard decision. Obviously, no one wants to lose your main event, and it was a shame James came off the card. But when we looked at it, look, Leah was always going to be on that televised section anyway. And anybody who's been in the 3 Arena when Leah's been fighting, I think you could say up with James and Peter, she's probably got the best support in there. Certainly vocally, it sounds pretty great. And she's on a bit of a trajectory at the moment. And to be honest, it just seemed like the right choice. And I think I feel like it's been well received. You know, we had some really, really good comments for her, and she deserves to be up there.
Do you feel like, obviously, because she's been in the mainstream press an awful lot, like this elevated status now going into the main event, despite her being just 4 fights into her professional career, do you feel like she can fully deal with that stage and the expectation that we put on her?
Yeah, I mean, she's been asking for this all the time, and I think, you know, you can see by talking to her, she has a lot on her shoulders. I mean, she carries a big role, I think, you know, as a sort of as a female fighter, and you know, it's almost like a female ambassador for Bellator. I think, you know, certainly on this side of the pond. And you know, a lot of factors go into who ends up at the top of the card. It's not just who's had the most fights or, you know, the records and everything else. It comes into a lot of factors. As we know, we're in the entertainment business here, and I think, you know, she just deserves to be up there. She's a great fighter, and you know, I'm really looking forward to that fight.
The last time we spoke, you said that Bellator don't really have any rivals in this area. Is that still the case? Do you think you have rivals in the area now?
Well, I don't think you've got any rivals in what we're doing over here, for sure. I think the landscape's changed in Ireland in MMA over the last year or two. And so if you look at the amount of professional MMA fighters that, you know, I think we could say we could create, and what we've done here with the talent pool, I think nobody still rivals that.
Obviously, you know, Bellator have put on 2 fight cards a year, almost, every year in the last 5 years, as you mentioned. UFC coming back in August. Will Bellator be back between September and December this year, as they have 3 times over the last 4 years?
Oh, well, I'd let you guess that one. What do you think?
Maybe.
I think we will. Yeah, we'll certainly be back.
A question, sorry, about Rafael Lovato Jr. He fought in London there in his last fight, and obviously he came out. He's had to kind of retire or let the title go anyway. Was there anything that you knew about coming into that fight, or anything coming into that fight that maybe he shouldn't have fought in that, or are you happy with everything that went down with him fighting there?
No, I think it's obviously a terrible shame what happened to him. I mean, he was so, you know, especially when he got to the top of the tree where he wanted to get to. But certainly we didn't know anything leading up to it. I think you know, what it does prove, unfortunately, at the expense of, you know, Rafael's career, I think, is you know, the stringent measures we put in place. And I think, you know, certainly on this side of the water, we've been leading the way on that for the last few years. And I think you know, unfortunately, it has results like this, but you know, it's for all the right reasons.
Dave, something that's maybe some of the fighters have brought up again today is Chris Bungard said it to me. He doesn't really see that there's a clear path for him, you know, maybe to kick on towards a title shot. Is that something maybe you guys might take on board, and maybe a ranking system? Because some of the fighters don't really seem to know what they're fighting for, if they're going to get, you know, sort of move up the scale, you know, up and towards that title when they're going into a fight.
Well, I think I mean, it's an interesting question. I think, you know, the guys over here, if you like, the guys fighting chiefly out of Europe, I think what we have offered is this way of getting to fight guys from, you know, in America, particularly some great fighters. We're putting on title fights over here. But I've toyed with the belt idea, which we just not, you know, we don't want to do, as I've discussed before. But I think the ranking system is an interesting idea. But, you know, Chris maybe been a little bit coy there. He's like, he feel a bit, he'll if he's winning and he wins, he'll get to fight the right guys. Simple as that.
But is there maybe a need then to create more of a storyline between certain fighters and things like that? maybe a narrative, because that's sort of something that I think the fans have said that maybe it's lacking a little bit.
Well, yeah, you're right. I mean, you're always trying to, develop paths for people and how that's going to work. But I think, by one way or the other, whether it being injuries or anything else, sometimes they just don't materialize. You can't just whisk them up overnight. And I think, we've only been going for a year over here. So those storylines, if they're going to start to develop, it's probably around about now that you'll start seeing them mature.
What about the Paul Redmond Georgie Carcanyon fight? All Irish MMA fans, I think, over the last couple of weeks have been maybe a bit perplexed that this fight is so far down the card with the other ones on top of it. Paul Redmond probably at the moment on this card anyway, the most experienced Irish MMA guy, and Georgie Carcanyon, the most experienced guy in the card. Why is that so far down? Is it anything to do with the fact Paul Redmond's not an SBG fighter?
It's absolutely nothing to do with that. I think, it's like I said at the beginning there, you put a lot of ingredients into who is at the top of the card. We've got fight cards going out into American TV. We've got fight cards going around the world on TV. So it's, it's not just about what's going on the ground. I think the key is if you come along on Saturday night to Arena, you get to see all the fights.
Sorry, go on, please.
Redmond spoke today, and he's never been the guy giving out or criticizing his place in the card. It's usually the fans and the media. But he said today that a main event in Dublin would be a crowning achievement for him. The icing on the cake for his career, essentially, is what he said. I mean, is that ever going to be a possibility? Like if he beats Carcanyon here, one of the hardest tests for any Irish person on this card, is that something you might look to do in the future? Because I feel like it's happened every time he's put on the preliminary card. There's this huge reaction from the Irish people. Is it just that the fans maybe they're prioritizing things differently than you, or is that a possibility? Do you feel like Paul Redmond could main event the Bellator card in the future?
I mean, you're absolutely right on that fight. I think it's a huge tough fight for him, and if he does that, he's done it very, very well. If he wins that fight, I think of course he could be on the main card. There's no doubt about it. I think.
But a main event.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if he's winning, of course he will. But I think, as I said to you, it's not just about what's going on. And for me, the hierarchy has some sort of hierarchy in terms of who's on where in the card. But everyone's fighting in that arena. It's full from the minute we go in there. Paul's going to get a great reception. Everyone in there is going to get to see him fight. You'll get to see him fight on YouTube as well. So in terms of watching him fight, everyone's going to be able to see that fight and see how well he does.
Last year you said were you looking to do 8 shows in the European circuit? Of course, Saturday night will be the first. Then London's just been announced as well. Can we expect a sort of really busy second half of the year, or have we sort of reevaluated that 8 shows?
Yeah, no, I think it's looking like we're going to do a lot more shows towards the end of the year as well, surely. But we've got off to a good start with Dublin, so it's nice to start the year. Really, really excited to announce that fight this morning. I think that London card, May the 16th at Wembley, I think is going to be fantastic. I think we've got James and Cal, third time's a charm, and obviously James Haskell debut, which I think everyone's looking forward to, and I think that'll be very exciting. And some more announcements on the rest of that card coming up, I think.
That London Fight Night, is that part of the European series, or will that be part of the sort of the standalone event that we've come to expect from Bellator, where the big American fights are coming across?
No, that's a Bellator Europe event.
So can we expect to see a Bellator London event as well as the standalone numbered one?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we did 2 events in London last year. I think London's obviously a place like Dublin where we'll be constantly revisiting, so I'm sure we'll be back.
Cal and James are both in Dublin this weekend as well. We've seen some of the social media beef in recent weeks. I know Pete was chanting on our show on Eurobot. Is that an issue to maybe just keep them far away as possible from each other?
Well, it's quite interesting we're having this conversation because they've obviously stopped cuddling now. So it's I was quite surprised.
And Ricky's here as well.
Yeah, exactly. So they can have a little tea party tomorrow.
Extra security around, no?
Well, we have this with lots of fighters. I mean, James and Cal in the past have been absolutely fine. I mean, it's been hard getting them to face off without having a little smile and a cuddle. So this time, I think we might not have that issue. But luckily, there'll be some idiot in the middle keeping them apart.
Any truth in Bellator Amsterdam?
We've been looking at Amsterdam. It's definitely one of the places we want to go to.
Any way that could happen this year?
Very much so, I think so. I think we've said quite openly we were looking at mainland Europe, the Nordics. We're going to Italy again in Milan. We had a great event there last year. We're back there in October. And, Amsterdam's very much on the list.
What about France with the change in regulation there?
we've made no secret France is very exciting. I mean, we've been looking at France for years and dying for that to happen. I think that announcement caught everyone by surprise. It came out a little bit earlier than we thought. Obviously, it's gone to the boxing commission, so that comes with a timeline that we're not all clear on. But it's the great thing is it's inevitable now. I think, and we'll be very much part of that picture when it opens up.
There's been talks of Stephen Espinosa and Showtime coming on board with Bellator as well. Is there anything that would change for you or for the European series if that was to change things over the next couple of years for maybe in America as well?
Yeah, I mean it's an open fact now. I think obviously now it's Viacom CBS. I think we'll have we'll be moving across to Showtime at some point, which is a great thing. I think in terms of how it affects the rest of the world, usually in my experience, if you've got the domestic where your promotion's based is on a bigger channel, on a sports channel, that sort of has a halo effect globally. So I'm hoping for some good things from there.
Is there any update on the Sky Sports deal? Obviously, it was supposed to end there at the start of January, and we're in nearly into February now. Any update on that?
Not quite, but we're having good conversations about that, so there'll be some news coming out about that soon.
David, I talked to Juan Archuleta last night, and he said he's been talking over in Spain, and he wants Bellator to move to Spain. I was talking to Pedro Carvalho, who of course is perhaps our biggest star fighting for a world title, and he said he wants to go to Portugal. Other people want to go to France. I mean, it's a good problem to have, but do you feel Bellator Europe is going to be truly European in the next couple of years and go everywhere?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's why we set the thing up. I mean, I always thought Europe was underserved. When you look at the global picture of MMA, I think the talent pool and the fan base, as I've always said, in Europe was massively underserved, and Bellator have actually done something about it. We've said we're going to do that. I mean, like you say, we've got a good problem because it's growing very quickly in all these markets. Spain is coming out with some great fighters, and they're clamoring for an event. Portugal, as you say, Pedro, I mean, he's going to put himself on the map in a couple of weeks' time. That's a huge fight for him, whichever way it goes, and a really good opportunity. So, I'm sure people like that, someone like a Pedro in his home country will, bring up the rest of the talent there. So it's definitely going to be on the radar. But if anybody's going to be able to service Europe properly, I think Bellator will be able to do that.
Of course, it'd be remiss of me not to mention Chris Bungard keeps asking about Glasgow, so a big win will push that a bit closer.
Well, Chris is always telling me he can fill out the hydro there, so I should be doing it already, I think. But he stepped up to take a really tough fight with Brent, and I think it's a golden opportunity for him. I think we've got some great fighters. I think we can announce today we've signed Ross Houston as well, which is quite exciting, and so he'll be making an appearance for us as well. So that roster's growing, and it'll be a matter of time before we're in Scotland.
So talking about Ross Houston there, he's obviously been calling out MVP, and is that a fight that you guys would be interested in at all, especially if it could be on a Glasgow card or anything like that?
Well, I mean, I like people who aim high. I think he's just freshly on board, so we'll just have to see where he goes and how he gets on. But I love the idea of a fight like that. We just have to see how it transpires.
David, is it safe to say then that the first kind of part of your European series is going well then? And do you reckon that Dublin has played a big part in establishing the European series for Bellator?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have your sort of end of school report last year of what we wanted to achieve, and I think we hit pretty much what we wanted to do. We were on Channel 5 6 times prime time. We had a great amount of people who were probably new eyeballs to the sport. We had some brilliant events and some really packed arenas, notably in Dublin. So of course it's a huge part of the story, and long may it continue. Yeah, and I think we can take what we did last year and build on it for this year.
And as you develop and grow, are you going to ensure that Ireland stays part of that picture?
Absolutely. I mean, there's no way we would. We've got such a solid foundation here, and it's such an important part of the story, both from a talent and from a fan base, that there's no way we wouldn't be here on a regular basis, as we proved.
Thank you.
David, do you think if Liam McCourt gets the victory on Saturday night, we'll be seeing a Bellator Belfast event?
Yeah, I mean, we've done a Bellator Belfast event, if you remember, a couple of years ago at the SSE, and I think it makes perfect sense. You obviously got James on the roster. Leah, if she wins, will be putting herself in a really good position, I think. So, no reason not to have an event in Belfast.
Will that be something in the 2020 timeline, or perhaps further on?
I don't know. I think it's a possibility. I think I'd like to think we could do something, but again, it sort of depends how the balls drop and where we end up.